Hey, what's up everyone? This is K Collections, and with every new banner comes a banner summary. And of course, as you all know, Saber Shiki will have a raid up during this event. She is a limited time service, so if you're gonna get her, now's the perfect chance. Just to let you guys know, Saber Shiki will have another raid up during the New Year's banner, according to JP at least. Ours may be a bit different again, so potentially she may be back during our Thanksgiving event, if they decide to make another Thanksgiving event, right? If you guys remember that change. But if not, then you can expect her to have a second raid up during January 1st to January 15th. Again, this is according to JP, and hey, that's when we're gonna get Musashi, so it's gonna be next year if you want to get her again. So, I know a lot of people will kind of compare both Shikis. Here's just a few differences between the two. Of course, they are both different class servants, right? One's Assassin, right? Assassin Shiki on the left and Saber Shiki on the right. One big difference is that Assassin Shiki has a single target Noble Phantasm with a potential of instant kill, right? She also has an invasion skill which really helps when surviving enemy Noble Phantasm attacks, which is something Saber Shiki lacks. I'll get into a bit more detail about that in just a moment, but Assassin Shiki has an NP charging skill as well, which definitely really helps her with using her NP a lot faster. So, moving on to Saber Shiki, she has an AoE Noble Phantasm with the potential of instant death. Along with that, a healing skill which really helps with survivability and attack buff. Again, I'll go into a lot more detail, but for those who are just wondering some key differences, those are just a few differences if you want to compare the two. Now, let's get started with her attack cards. Saber Shiki has 1 quick, 2 arts, and 2 buster with a Arts Noble Phantasm. This means she can Arts Brave Chain as well as perform Arts Chain with other servants, which really helps in terms of her being able to use her NP a lot more. For her hit counts, Quick does 4 hits, Arts does 2 hits, Buster does 1 hit, Extra does 4 hits, and for her Noble Phantasm, it does 1 hit. So not bad whatsoever, right? But do know, because her Noble Phantasm is 1 hit only, that means her NP gain off her Noble Phantasm isn't a lot, especially when you compare it to another Arts Noble Phantasm servant that has a higher hit count. So just be aware of that. Now, we're going to move on to her active skills, right? So, her active skills are actually quite good. Now, I say that because it has a lot of synergy, and if you know me, I love servants with a lot of synergy, especially with their attack cards, Noble Phantasm, and passive/active skills, right? So, first off, all her skills have a decent cooldown, right? 7 turns is not bad whatsoever, and the thing is, if you level her skill to max level 10, right, then the cooldown will be only for 5 turns. So again, relatively low in my opinion, and for her last skill, right, it's a 4-turn cooldown if you level to level 10. So let's go back to her first skill, Mystic Eye. So this is actually quite cool. It does a lot of stuff. First, it ignores invincibility, which is always great. Not only that, this skill also increases arts card performance, or her arts card performance, right? This is all targeting herself. Well, her first skill also targets enemy, but everything else, she doesn't help any allies. She is somewhat of a selfish servant, but nonetheless, it really helps her when she uses her Noble Phantasm. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right, so since she has 3 arts card, which includes her Noble Phantasm, it's an excellent, and like I mentioned, great synergy, right? And the thing is, the third effect of her skill, this is one of the most important ones, which decreases death resistance of all enemies. The main usage of the skill is right before you activate her Noble Phantasm. Ideally, you want to perform an Arts Brave Chain just so you can utilize the arts buff a bit more. But like I said, the main key effect from her first skill is the decrease in death resistance, because that correlates to her Noble Phantasm, and I will talk about that once I get to her Noble Phantasm. Moving on to her second skill, Shining Cloud. This skill buffs her attacks anywhere from 15% upwards to 25% depending on the skill level. It also increases mental debuff resistance, which to me is added bonus, right? That's not bad whatsoever, but the main point of this skill is the attack buff. So typically you want to activate this skill like any other attack buffs. Activating this skill before her Noble Phantasm can definitely help in damage output, right? In case your instant death fails, right, this would add more damage. So hopefully this combined with the first skill, you could kill off your enemy. Keep in mind though, when you're facing an enemy servant, typically boss battles, right? Her Noble Phantasm instant death will be a lot less effective. That's what I was saying, using Shining Cloud, her second skill to increase her attack is definitely required, especially when you're facing servants. For her last skill, it's an amazing healing skill, let me tell you guys. So, you can heal her anywhere from 2,000 upwards to 5,000 HP. Meaning, if you have this skill at level 10, right? Every 4 turns means you're healing most of her health. There is a cost, but honestly, it's not bad whatsoever. The cost of this skill is sacrificing 10% of your NP gauge, which is not bad like I already mentioned. So Saber Shiki will actually benefit a lot for being at NP level 2, right? Just to kind of have that safe zone, right? Because if you only have her at NP level 1, then you're going to have to kind of prioritize which one you want first. Heal her first or activate her Noble Phantasm first. If she's almost dying, right? If one more hit she dies, then it's kind of a difficult decision. But having her at NP level 2 will kind of, and of course, this depends on her overcharge, right? If she has above 100% NP gauge, this will definitely help in terms of healing her and her being able to activate her Noble Phantasm. But of course, she is a 5-star servant. Not all of us can afford, NP level 2 5-star servants, Not all of us have that much of a luck, but you never know, right? But I just want to throw that out there, just so you guys know that having her at NP level 2 will kind of help with this third skill. So overall, all her skills are honestly really amazing, right? Especially when connecting to her Noble Phantasm, which is her main strength. So moving on to her passive skills now, the first one is Magic Resistance. We've seen this a lot of times, right? In this case, it's rank A, meaning the increase in debuff resistance is at 20%, which is quite high, right? And for the second passive skill, it increases critical strength by 6%, increases death resistance by 6%, and increases mental debuff resistance by 6%. Not bad whatsoever. There's a lot going for a second passive skill. And for her last passive skill, it increases Arts, Quicks, and Buster effectiveness by 6%. That's actually quite cool, as her different attack cards gets a little boost. Now, for her Noble Phantasm, like I mentioned, this is an AoE Noble Phantasm that deals damage to all enemies while ignoring defense. What's really special about this is that it has the potential to cause instant death to all enemies. Not only that, this Noble Phantasm also removes debuffs on all your allies. That's freaking amazing if you ask me, right? So, there's a chance to cause instant death, killing all your enemies, in the current wave. And it also removes all debuffs, which, in the future, a lot of enemies will debuff your servants a lot of times. So at the end of the day, her Noble Phantasm is her main selling point, and like I mentioned, you want to activate her first 2 skill to enhance her NP. Just so you know, you can't really rely on her instant death when you're facing boss enemies, so you're going to have to prioritize or strategize a bit differently when you're facing boss enemies, and I'll get to that more specifically when I talk about her strengths, her weaknesses, my final thoughts on the servant. So moving on, we're actually getting 6 new craft essence in this banner, and in my honest opinion, they aren't that great. Keep in mind, they do help with farming in this event, but like I said, they're not that great. Feel free to disagree with me, but for long-term use, they're not that good, right? So starting with the first 5-star craft essence, Grand Puppeteer, your NP gauge starts at 50%, and it also increases art cards performance by 15% for 3 turns, and that's the issue. After 3 turns, it's pretty much useless. If you max limit break it, MP gauge starts at 60%, and your arts card performance increased to 20% for 3 turns. Moving on to Mature Gentleman, and this honestly is not great whatsoever, because when's the last time you've been hit with instant death, right? But for the effects, it gives you a death resistance plus of 60%, max limit break it will then give you a death resistance plus of 80%. Now, moving on to the new 4-star craft essence, the first one basically gives you a damage plus of 800 damage. Max limit break it then will give you a damage plus of 1000 damage. It's helpful for, increased damage output a bit. Moving on to the other 4-star craft essence, this increases Buster card performance by 20%, but there is a downside. It decreases units defense by 15%. If you max limit break it, Buster card performance would then increase to 25%, and the decrease in defense stays the same, thankfully, right? And that's where you're gonna have to weigh the pros and cons of this craft essence, right? Better Buster card performance at the cost of defense. If it's good, then definitely go for it. But there are definitely better options for CE for your servants. right? This, again, not that great in my opinion. Better options to choose from. Now, moving on to a new 3-star craft essence. This is actually, in my honest opinion, right? This one is actually quite good, especially if you're a beginner. If you don't have any good craft essence whatsoever. And for the effects, MP gauge starts at 20%, MP generation plus 10%, Maximum Break It, MP gauge starts at 30%, and MP generation plus 15%. Like I said, it's one of the better 3-star craft essence. If you're a beginner and you don't have any 4 or 5-star craft essence, hey, this one's actually quite good for you. Now for the last 3-star craft essence, Quick Card Performance plus 5%, Debuff Resistance plus 10%, Maximum Break It, Arts Card Performance then increased to 8%, Debuff Resistance then increased to 15%. So like I said, these craft essence, besides helping you farm, there's really no need to get them whatsoever. Save your Saint Quartz if you're not after Saber Shiki, and if you don't really care about increasing your farming rates or your item drops, then you can skip this banner because Johto is right around the corner. I just want to remind you guys. So, my final thoughts. Saber Shiki is an excellent servant when it comes to farming, especially on waves of enemies that has a lot of HP. Her instant death is highly effective against enemies, but she isn't as strong when facing boss servants. That's one of her weakness, right? Her damage output isn't as strong, right? It's relatively low when you compare her to other 5-star Sabers. But, like I said previously, her biggest strength is her Noble Phantasm. That's honestly what she relies on. Another downside is she cannot protect herself against enemy servant Noble Phantasm, so she will need help from others. Overall, like I already mentioned, her main focus is her Noble Phantasm, especially when her first 2 skills help enhance her NP. Her healing skill will keep her alive a lot longer, but it will cost you your NP gauge, so like I already mentioned before as well, having her at NP level 2 is most ideal, but you don't have to. It's not required, it just helps a bit. So, for team composition, she fits amazingly well with Arts team, specifically Tamamo and Joan of Arc. Both can perform frequent Arts chain with Saber Shiki, so you can use her NP a lot more. Tamamo is excellent because she can cut down Saber Shiki's skill cooldown, and the thing is, she already has a relatively low skill cooldown to begin with, meaning she can activate them even faster. So, for example, right, if you have her healing skill at level 10 with Tamamo, that means it's 5,000 HP healed every 3 turns. That's godly to me, okay? And the thing is, of course, Tamamo's Noble Phantasm also heals and increases NP gauge as well. Joan of Arc is a great help to Saber Shiki in terms of surviving enemy Noble Phantasm, which is, again, is something that Saber Shiki lacks. So if you're on the fence, pull for Shiki if you need a strong farmer, but if you're after a powerful Saber class boss killer, then you honestly don't need her. That's of course if you haven't decided to pull on her already, right? If you want Saber Shiki, then definitely go for it. For myself, I'm actually skipping this banner entirely. Lastly, here's just some craft essence to help her. Formal craft, pretty self-explanatory, right? The Black Grail, Heaven's Feel CE, these 2 are actually good for her Noble Phantasm damage output, right? Especially when you're facing a servant boss or something. Don't worry about the loss of health from Black Grail, because Shiki can definitely heal herself well enough. And, the thing is, that's about it, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I'll be making a lot more FGO videos. Don't forget to comment down below to let me know if you're planning to pull on this banner. Now, as always, let's have fun with this event and have an awesome day, everyone. Till next time.